Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. We received today Ravi Chaudhry. Ravi Chaudhry, former chairman of Tata Group companies, is an author, speaker, changemaker, and transformational coach. An advisor to corporations and governments, he regularly leads board dialogues and leadership workshops in USA, Europe, and Asia. For first, Ravi will present you who is he, and after that, Isabelle Gian will ask him 2 questions. I will ask him 5 questions, and you will be exceptionally open to ask him what you want on 30 minutes. Nice to meet you, Ravi.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Delighted to be here. And you have already said a few things about me. Well, I live in India, and I have a mission which I share with most of you here in this group, how to make this world more equitable, more sustainable, not for a few, but for everyone, everywhere, all the time. And in that context, I write, I speak, I conduct programs with corporate boards, because I think corporations play a leading role. And we'll discuss what that means in the context of our mission. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Isabelle, it's up to you.
Thank you, Penelope. Hi, Ravi. It's a great honor to have you. Thank you so much. I have the hard task to ask you the first question. So, Ravi, I would like to ask you the question that, do you think that corporates have a major role in the current world transformation toward, as you said, a more inclusive and sustainable society? And if yes, why?
I think you're still muted.
Yes, microphone, please.
Sorry. Thank you for asking this question. And I think it's good that we start with it. If we scan history, we will find that in every period, there is one dominant group which accepts a much greater role than anybody else or any other group in looking after the welfare of the society. In the olden days, it used to be church, and then tribal chiefs, and kingdoms and small kings. And in the last 5-6 decades, we have seen that the corporations all put together wield a tremendous power. They contribute to the political parties, they contribute to these MBA schools and businesses, they own the media. They control virtually everything, which determines the opinions of the people. And therefore, they have to realize something which corporations have never done so. And that is that they have to accept responsibility for the whole society in which they function. This is a collective responsibility and a role they haven't yet seen. They have two options today, as we will discuss. Either they change on their own and take the early bird advantage in aligning their mission with societal expectations, or else they may be forced to change involuntarily, which may await some unpalatable results. So I speak to many CEOs and boards to tell them it's in your interest to change. And the window that we have to do so is very small. I see a change happen, and I think we are on good track.
Okay, it's very, very interesting. And I think that most of us share your view. I would like to ask you a second question. Do you feel that there are bridges that need to be built between East and West?
Well, bridge building has become an essential trait of leadership today. And it's not only about East and West. It's about the owners and the laborers. These one part of society with the other part of society, the diversity which people fail to respect. And they don't realize that the bridge has a tremendous power, tremendous potential to solve any issue. If you have differences, a bridge which is built will bridge not only the differences, but create a lively environment for alignment of objectives. When you are aligned and you find what unites them rather than what divides them, that's a great starting point. And in today's world, when it is becoming increasingly clear that there is no island one can be secluded in and live without fear and with ease, that, oh, I'm okay, nothing will happen to me. Today, we'll all perish or we'll all survive. So the bridge building is a very, very important part of leadership trait. I'll cover it a little more as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Penelope, it's up to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ravi. Okay, now, what flagship message would you like to share with the emerging leaders who are counting on your exceptional leadership experiences to create desired futures?
Oh, this is a pivotal question. Let's begin by clarifying two important aspects of this question. Future for whom? Future for a few or a future for all? The 1% elite that control and steer all levers of power, or the ignored and the excluded 5 billion citizens of planet Earth, for whom poverty has become destiny? And second, when we visualize a future, we start from the present moment and take a call on what is good about it, which must be preserved, and what is not good about it, which must be reversed. So the focus has to be on what's not good and why, and who are the persons responsible for it. And then we have to consider whether those who are a part of the problem can also become a part of the solution. So far, it has not happened. And we need to understand why. There are three main reasons. One, a growing deficit of democracy all over the world. 54% of the population in 79 countries live in authoritarian regimes. Of the 74 so-called democracies, only 6.4% people in 21 countries have a full democracy. All others, including those of us who live in Brazil, France, India, Italy, Spain, and USA, are living in flawed democracies. So, in most countries, people are afraid of calling a spade a spade. Second issue is that there is a virtual collapse of individual and institutional values. Somehow those at the top of global wealth and power genuinely believe that what they have is their entitlement, and they are not accountable for any collateral damages. They forget that universal values never wilt nor wane. Only those who don't follow them do. The third factor is that the key accompaniment in a democratic society is the presence of a public sphere for open discourse, a space independent of both business ownership and state control. But all our media today is controlled by either or both. Even business schools and educational institutions are only doing lip service. So apparently, the forces that sustain status quo may seem to be stronger than those that seek change. But I will share many convictions, and one of them is that when the known doors close up, new doors open up. The third question is that we are discussing future, but we must be clear that does humanity have a future today? Because we are living under different existential catastrophes: climate change, nuclear war, engineered pandemics, uncontrolled artificial intelligence, and technologies not yet foreseen or developed. In fact, technology seems to have bestowed on us finally the power to wipe our own life from this planet. Oxford philosopher Toby Ord says that the likelihood of humanity wiping itself out is 1 in 6 in the next 100 years. And others say that it's no better than 50-50. With this preamble, I shall now share my vision of the future we all should seek. My search for a truly holistic and yet achievable mission and a vision for how a nation should be governed led me to the words of Rabindranath Tagore, the Literature Nobel Prize laureate in 1913. I share his vision that comes from the serene depths of his heart in these 90 words. And I quote, "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the word has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom. My Father, let my country awake. Let my word grow. Thank you. Your sound. Oh, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Ravi. How to conciliate competition and cooperation?
Well, these two words are the defining parameters on how a business functions. By itself, neither competition nor collaboration is good or bad. It depends entirely on the purpose. Not just the stated purpose, but the intent behind it. Open, fair competition is good. It's a pillar of good capitalism. This sort of competition is not about conquest or conflict, but competitive pressures meant to weaken rivals through unfair lobbying or unjust influence is equivalent to nibbling at the roots of capitalism. And that is what we face today in the world. Our research shows that the corporate boards and CEOs are ready to cooperate with anybody as long as it helps improve their profits. They will collaborate with strangers, middlemen, power brokers, politicians, leaders, competitors, as long as it improves their bottom line. No issue of morality or right or wrong is raised. The tragedy is that they are not willing, not even open to collaborate with their most important asset, their employees. In general, they are at odds with them. And this leads to another of my convictions, that a society is a cooperative venture for general good. If you identify commonality of interest with anybody, social cooperation can make possible a better life for all. But in each cooperation, there is also a conflict of interest on how the gains are to be shared. Each wants a larger share. These are the principles of social justice and the basis of social contract. In most countries, this social contract is broken. If this is not corrected, none of the other partnerships and collaborations will work hereafter. And we see a resolute resurgence of change makers led by 2.4 billion millennials and 2.5 million Gen Z, supported by multitudes of employees, customers, and many outstanding business leaders, former and current CEOs, determined to bring about equity and sustainability. Corporate boards and CEOs need to be cognizant that the period for cosmetic exercises to create a positive image is over. It's now time to alter the reality. I believe that a corporation that accepts the ethos, the non-negotiable ethos of profits with conscience, growth with equity, and compatibility with nature can become a global leader in its business domain. People will come running to them for partnerships. And this is where the future of partnerships and common interests lie.
You asked you the third question, but how to create for you a creative and innovative company?
Well, this has been a subject of research with me for a long time, and there were many years, and I still do lots of programs with corporate leaders and teams on how to do that, because this increases profits, directly. Now, Titan is India, is about $4 watch and jewelry company. They run an innovation factory inside the organization. The company realized a decade ago, and I was with the managing director at that time, that their innovative ideas were coming only from 15% of the employees. That's when they questioned, why can't everybody innovate? We hired the best people we can get from all over the world and turn them into average performers. Why is that? Sounds familiar, I'm sure. Let me say how they discovered that the moments of epiphany, the Newton's apple moments, can be systematically reproduced. But it depends on how the ideas move through the organization. Ultimately, innovation depends upon the quality of conversation in the organization. I've spoken about perhaps 1,500 to 2,000 words in this session so far. But apart from the words, we were impacted by the silence between words, the gestures, the expressions, the authority or humility behind each word. And you had reaction, comprehension or lack of it, irritation or indifference, not relevant, agreement or disagreement. But all this is the consequence of conversation that we carried on. Now, I read a nice book by Nancy Klein called Time to Think. And she wrote about igniting the potential of individuals and teams at work all the time. I have validated her findings with my own experiences to discover how each dialogue, each meeting in a corporation can be an innovation laboratory. And I came to 5 conclusions. A manager's ability to turn meeting into a thinking environment is an organization's greatest asset. This is applicable to not only corporations, but governments, NGOs, think tanks, universities, schools, colleges, anywhere. The second is the quality of our attention determines the quality of others people thinking. I often tell people, listen to me with your eyes. That means we must look into each other's eye when we are conversing. And that shows respect for each other. That ensures you don't divert your attention anywhere else. And that creates wonders in how people can start generating ideas. We should never interrupt anyone one speaks, particularly a boss should never. Oh, I know about that. Or never shorten the conversation. I have 2 more minutes, go on. Appreciation is necessary for optimal idea generation. I found that this research which proved that ratio of appreciation to criticism should be 5:1. If you do that, you will have people creating ideas all the time. And finally, nurture curiosity. an ability to look at the world with fresh, inquiring eyes, and have always the thrill of not knowing. It's a great thrill. Oh, I don't know, I must discover. So that is what leads to a relentless innovation in an organization. Believe me, it works. Okay.
Thank you. After that, how to conciliate advanced technologies with perennial wisdom?
That is everybody's favorite question, because we are all worried about where technology is taking us without our knowing anything about it. May I start with 4 observations? Technology by itself is socially and morally neutral. Depending upon how it's used, it generates positive or negative outcome. Second, the outcomes are not universally positive or universally negative. They could be good for some and harmful for others. And third, technology has no borders, no nationality. The impact is felt all over the world. And fourth, we must be explicitly clear whether the gains of technology should be limited to the few who already are well off, or can it create better lives for those who are not well off, or can it do both? I believe it can do so if technology leaders can do it right. But most important thing is to negate the detrimental impact of technology. And this is the prime mission. I liked Hugh Halpern. She raised, Sue Halpern, she raised lots of issues about the human costs of artificial intelligence. AI is used today to monitor farmers' fields, compute credit scores, decide whether you are eligible for a loan, or kill an Iranian nuclear scientist, compute credit scores, grade papers, diagnose various kinds of cancers, and write newspaper articles, buy and sell stocks, and decide which actors to invite to act in your next film so that you have the best return. And this is just a small specimen of the task artificial intelligence is trying to master in the days to come. The prospect is that we will soon work for our machines and not the other way around. Humans will voluntarily perhaps end up ceding the very essence of ourselves, our curiosity, our compassion, our autonomy, our creativity, to narrow algorithmic-driven vision of what counts in the world. Yuval Harari warns of a future dominated by AI that doesn't have consciousness. They just have intelligence, which is much more frightening. They will say they can solve the problem better than us, but have no consciousness and no feelings. So our biggest fear is that in this attempt to upgrade humans, we'll actually downgrade humanity. They may amplify certain human qualities they need, like discipline, and sacrifice other qualities like sensitivity or spirituality or empathy. The concern is that by definition, what we call artificial today may be considered natural tomorrow. Now, the problem isn't whether we'll be enslaved by machines, but that this enslavement will strengthen the division between humanity. Some people will control us, and some people will be controlled. In view of that, I have the other concern is that no nation is capable of controlling the direction, the trajectory of future technology. I think the only path which is being attempted meaningfully is by European Union. And they are asking the right questions. What should we collectively do in order to understand this ever-changing technological cosmos, endorse its uncertainties, and reap the benefits of this age in a people-friendly and socially friendly way? I think it's possible to do so, but to cope with AI, you don't need more intelligence, you need wisdom.
Okay, Ravi, thank you. The last questions for us, and after it will be open to everyone. How to take advantage of the cultural diversity in the world?
Well, this is just like asking, how do I take advantage of oxygen in the air? Air is around me all the time, everywhere. I need it to survive every moment of my life. It is what makes me live. Diversity, likewise, is all around us in infinite measure. It's the nature of life. Diversity of 8 billion species sustains eco-balance and life on Earth. Diversity of the unique gifts of nature nurture us all the time. Diversity in our food, in what we read, in what we hear, in what we see, and where we travel. We love all that. Just as the organs and cells in our body are interconnected by their oneness and work together in harmony for purpose of sustaining our life, so each and every human being is an intrinsic part of the symphony of life on this planet. Then what happens when we come across diversity in our own human species? We see a person with a different color, or one who worships a different god, or one who comes from a different background, or one with a different anatomy. Hell breaks loose, and our entire sense of balance and whatever wisdom we may have attained disappears. And we don't even acknowledge what is good for us. Diversity is good for us in every circumstance I've described. And if we don't respect it in the domain which matters the most, you then are missing achieving the potential that you have. You are achieving only a very small proportion of what you think is your potential. There's a famous African proverb, a person is a person through other persons. It means that we learn and experience in the world through our relationship with other people, by entering into a purposeful dialogue with them and building bridges of understanding with them. There's no big thing in building a bridges of understanding with my family members. I need to build bridges of understanding with those who face the challenges of life. And I have been bestowed with the advantage to help them. Cultural diversity, you mentioned that, promotes inclusiveness and celebrates people for their differences as much as for their similarities. Eventually, we need to go beyond diversity, which means that we start listening with respect and paying attention to what the diverse voices are saying. I am a great believer in diversity, and thank you, Ravi. You have asked some wonderful questions, which have really made me think. Wonderful.
You have another questions in the chat.
Yes, of course.
Questions. Raj told you, well, sometimes not all ideas are welcomed, and some are on an idea loop, repeating what everyone already knows. So how to listen?
Sorry.
Raj, you want to ask your question?
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Ravi. It's been awesome listening to you. Such wisdom flowing, just amazing. The question was referring to something you said earlier about, listening helps to, build some kind of resilience. You didn't use that word, but, so my question was, we can't always look at the person in the eye, and we can't always listen until, the person has terminated. Some people can speak without stopping, and so how to listen constructively, how to say, well, thank you for sharing that thought, or how to say stop, and how to manage that, to say, to acknowledge the person, but that it's enough. Any pointers would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Well, as a listener, the greatest gift that you can give another person, or the greatest gift you can give him, is the purity of your attention. And an attempt to hear not merely what the person is saying, but also what is not being said. And that's where the real skill lies. And that's where the commonality comes out. And as a speaker, words are like ideas. The words with ideas are sails with wind. But if you say only something without an idea in it, it doesn't get noticed by those who listen. And we have to create an environment where we encourage everybody we speak to, we speak with, or who speak to us, that they should not suffocate a good idea by expressing it in too many words. And we should not give a quick judgment about whether an idea is good or bad. The purpose of asking a question is to generate many more questions. I often do an exercise on brainstorming where we raise one question, and then we ask a group of 20 people to raise further questions relating to that. And surprisingly, at the end of 12 minutes, the duration of this exercise, 2 or 3 questions point out the solution to the original question. You try it out. Or ask me,
thank you.
Help to try
it. Yeah. Thank you, Ravi. It's really amazing. What was really particular about what you said is to listen not only to the words, but what is also not being said. And then you also brought in this idea of not judging what the other is saying, and so I'm reflecting on what you're saying in terms of conflict. Right now we can see that world is at conflict, and everyone is talking. I don't know who is listening, and those who are listening, I don't know what they are listening to. But in any case, we're not finding resolution. So what would be your suggestion, to this conflict that we're having in Europe right now? And who is doing the listening? Who is doing the talking? Who is doing the observing? Who is doing the judging? And what would be your recommendation? Thank you so much.
Well, I know this is a question on the mind of every European more than others in other parts of the world. And we are going through a war. Let's not hide it. But why do wars come? Wars come because we fail to win the peace. We have had 5 decades, 7 decades actually, since Second World War. There hasn't really been a war. other than the America which fought wars far away, but they were localized with not so much impact. Actually, impact was there, but people in Europe and US never heard of that. So today in Europe, we have a war after 7 decades of peace, but we failed to win the peace. And that's why there's war. And that this particular comment I made is easier said than understood, frankly. And even I'm trying to think about it as I speak.
Yes, yes. So it does show that it's very difficult to ask the right questions. It's very difficult to listen. It's very difficult to not judge. And this miscommunication is not just creating a war across Europe, it's also creating a war within a country, you know, between government and citizens, and, you know, who should be doing, who should be doing the listening, and how listening and asking questions can be protocoled in a way that, you know, fits the purpose. So I feel like we live in a world where, you know, we're in abundance of information, but yet nobody can make any sense. We're abundance of people talking, yet nobody's listening. So, you know, it's a very difficult time. Everybody wants to be heard. Nobody wants to listen. And so understanding deep listening, I think, would be, you know, a key to develop more resilient organizations, you know, resilient countries and resilient, you know, inter-country relations. But that's not happening. And you know, so somehow we need to either be able to listen deeply, strongly, and teach the generations to do that, or to speak more sharply, clearly, you know, to pierce, you know, the words that actually make sense. So I'm looking forward to what you're going to say, you know. Thank you so much.
Well, I think there is, I mean, last time I delivered a whole lecture for an hour on this issue. And it starts with, by us not being aware of what is really happening. Most of us who are successful, we believe we know answers to all the questions of life. The first thing which is very difficult for people to admit is, hey, come on, all the questions have changed. The answers you know are no longer relevant. So you have to completely empty your mind of all past prejudices, beliefs, whatever knowledge you may have gained, whatever likes, dislikes you may have had, and start as a child who knows no hatred and whose nature is to love. And then you can understand the issue. Don't look for answers, because when you look for answers, you have decided already the outlines of the question, which perhaps is not the right question. So I say that the answer to a question lies within the question. Keep questioning the questions. But by being humble, by being sensitive, by being willing to sacrifice, which means give and take. People don't like giving, they only want taking. They want rights, but no responsibilities. So I think this process is started. The youth will bring it about in the world. The young generations which are coming out, they are not concerned about the ideologies or the economic theories. They want an economics that works for all and a peace that prevails everywhere. And the younger generation we'll see coming up holding the reins of power. It may take 1 generation, 2 generations, but not longer than that. I am very, very positive.
Thank you, Ravi. I'll give the mic back to the room in case others have questions.
Ravi, you have another questions in the chat. Henry, you have a question?
Good morning, Ravi. That's a pleasure to listen to you. I fully agree with you. AI is just a technology, and it's not. It depends obviously on its use. And I think that the AI is not changing the fact that there are always some people who are controlled and some people who are controlling. So that's a nature, I would say, of humanity at some point. The problem I see with AI is, in fact, at the moment we are getting with media and some who are controlling behaviors and more about also the way we think. The danger of AI is we are getting a technology which can control also our values, and that's something which scares me, as I am studying that domain for a long time now, more than 15 years. So I fully agree with you. I think that Europe is doing a good thing by providing some regulation around that aspect. At the same time, Europe is thinking that the values are fixed, and obviously only European values are the right one, and this is about the danger of that thinking, which is to think that only our values are the best one, and we know that an Indian can think differently, Asian can think differently, even if they are Western countries as well, Canadian and US also. So I think that it's time now to study values and to understand that how they are changing and evolving, because the country laws or the European laws are based on values that we think are fixed, and they are not anymore. What are you thinking about that aspect of evolution of values, the fact that we have not the same values, but at the same time we need to share now more and more values because we are one single humanity?
That's a great question, Henry. I think this view comes forth from the belief that values are different.
Mm-hmm.
But what is different cannot be the values. What is different is how we perceive the values. Values, I mean, there's only one value really one needs to know about, and that is the ability, the readiness, and the willingness to listen to one's conscience. The answer that you get from within you, whether what you are doing is right or wrong, is the basis of values. And the conscience of an individual is the same all over the world. It's only when we start engineering it, clipping it, nibbing at it, so we create a set of what we call values, which are going to help us progress more and not the others. So it is this aspect. Now, how does one listen to conscience? You could ask. Well, actually, that's possible only if one does not retain in one's mind the past prejudices and beliefs and biases. It's a difficult thing to say, difficult thing to understand, difficult thing to practice. But once one is committed And once one is not relying on one's ego to answer. Ego is a very interesting word, but it's basically overconfidence in yourself, over-reliance on your judgment. And ego is that which edges goodness out, ego. So if you listen to ego, which is a reflection of the conscience, then there will be a universality of values. There's more that unites the world than what divides the world. And I think our hope for tomorrow is the youth of today. And I think they have had enough. And I see some of them leading and becoming the change makers we want ourselves to be.
This is a great answer. At the same time, it raises a lot of questions because, in fact, we consider values at different levels. You said, okay, there is a sort of super value which drives all the others. And there are a lot of debate around that. And we have seen several thinkers and philosophers saying that there is a fixed list of values which are not the one that you consider as the ultimate one. So difficulty, obviously, and you talked also about consciousness of values, and I fully agree with you that there are a lot of difficulties to perceive what are the values, what makes the difference between values and principles, how you apply those principles into your own life, meaning the type of interpretation that you talked about previously, about bias and all that sort of thing. So we all know the difficulties of defining, understanding, making the connection with the consciousness and all that sort of thing. We are trying to do something which is a step into the direction of measuring, or at least, in fact, understanding better the values. But that's only a small step, I think, about that. But I think that one of the difficulties is to do some research around that, because we are not agreeing on those definitions and all those differences, unfortunately. But I think that we should progress on that subject if we want really to drive the world a little bit differently, provide a different governance, provide also new tools to consider that those bias, those difference of understanding, but also to help people to understand each other. At the moment, unfortunately, because we are not listening enough, because we are not listening what is not said, we are trying to judge. We are trying too much to, I would say, push our own knowledge, our own lack of humility, if I can say that, to the others, rather than, in fact, trying to understand how much we are sharing and what we have in common, rather than, in fact, what separates us.
I think we have said lots of things, and they are very relevant, and they are necessary to understand, to create a unified understanding of what the values are. I actually have done a lot of work on this, and there are 3 chapters in the book I wrote on Quest for Exceptional Leadership, which logically talks of all the value systems and what they talk of in ancient texts and in modern concepts. And then I have distilled out of that the 3 traits of exceptional leadership. So it's, I mean, of course, there could be a different version of that. It must be. But they are basically focusing on similar values which unite the world.
We should.
Because if there is a value which divides the world, it cannot be called a value.
I fully agree.
So I think as long as we keep this simple principle in mind, I mean, if you are willing to collaborate, that was the question asked by Penelope. If you are willing to collaborate, everything will be fine. If you are looking for a conflict, nothing will work.
Thank you, Ravi.
Claudine,
so
you
much.
have a great question. Would you like to?
Sure. Hi, Ravi. Great to see you.
Wonderful.
Yes. So would you agree that the total imbalance between male and female principals is at the core of many of the problems we face? And if so, what would you think women could and should do to restore the balance?
You have asked me a question I love. Women should only do what they are doing. They should do nothing else. Women will play a much greater role in the change the world needs. And they can do so by being themselves as they are. And I think we see more women leaders coming up in the world today. Younger women creating how business should be conducted. They have an inbuilt empathy. They have an inbuilt concern for the otherness, for others. They don't look at others as otherness. In fact, what I perceive is that women are likely to be much better leaders than men. But not all women. But that expression is best explained by Mother Teresa. If I can share it with you. To lead people, you have to understand them. To understand people, you have to be close to them. To be close to them, you have to love them. And if you don't love them, you cannot lead. It's a woman's nature to be caring, to be sharing, to be loving. Women will enter a conflict only when they are forced to. So I think the feminine mindset is more attuned to lead the world today to get us out of the mess we are in. This is my strong belief. I'm not saying all men are not good, but I think many men will gain a lot by having some of the feminine virtues which come naturally to them.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question, if that's okay. Wouldn't you think, that's at least my take of it, that the women are also polluted by the masculine principles because they're so dominant? And it's like a fish in the water, right? Like we can't see it because it's all around us. And when I look at the women that I met in corporate that have been promoted, where most of them were tougher than men and had lost all the attributes that you have just described. And is it then not also for the women to unlearn and sort of remember like what actually the true calling on this planet for women is?
I think I don't really see this as a problem, really. No. This is a normal, circumstantial issue. Of course, women have to be determined to achieve what their mission is. They have to have a clarity about their vision and not too much ambition. They must raise the right resources of support. But if they do all that, I don't see this as a problem, frankly. I don't know if you would agree or not, but yes, this is one of the problems of progressing. Progress has got obstacles. I mean, the purpose of leadership is to move ahead on the trajectory of progress for the society. And if a leader doesn't have that goal, then he is not a leader.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, but we have to finish this session. If you want to talk to Ravi, you have every information in the chat, and we will be there in another time. And thank you, Ravi, for everything, for being there with us. We are now at the beginning of a new cooperation, and I think you will be the best person to encourage us. And thank you for everyone in Sustainavest, and thank you for everyone who can see you today and ask you every questions.
It's been a great pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed every moment of our discussion today. What a lovely group of fellow human citizens. Thank you very much
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ravi.
Ravi.
for being what you are.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Philip. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Ravi.
Bye. Bye, Mehdi.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Penelope.
Obvious.
Premiumbeat.com.
Thank you. Thank you very much again.
Bye-bye.